Hi everyone. Today I want to talk to you about two things that I am really passionate about and things that are a huge part of my life, and that is board games and teaching. And I want to talk to you about how board games can be really useful classroom tools for helping engage with your learners, and why, if you don't already, you should start using board games in your classroom. For a little bit of context, from where I'm coming from, my point of view in making this video, I'm an FE lecturer, so the stuff that I talk about in this is going to be particularly applicable for college students, sixth form, perhaps secondary, but not so much primary, though I have had lots of success working with younger children and using games for teaching with them as well. So some of it might be applicable, but the sort of target audience for where I'm coming from with what I'll talk about today is very much teenage and older. Also, the area that I have taught within is within the creative industries, so working with students on courses for things like film, TV, photography, games designs, very creative skill sets. So I might reference that within what I talk about. However, I think that the content for this would be suitable for students studying any subject area, and that it would be useful for any curriculum that you're using. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I think you should use board games in your classroom. I'm going to give you some things to think about if you're planning on doing that, and then I'm going to give you some game recommendations to get you started with your own classroom board game collection. So here are 5 reasons why I think you should be using board games in your classroom. And the first one is that board games are really great for team building. If you've got a group of students and you want them to work together as part of a team, perhaps it's the first time that you're meeting them, it's during induction week, and they're all strangers to each other and you're trying to introduce them, or even if they're a group of students you've known for ages but they have just never really meshed very well, or maybe there's been a bit of a breakdown in the relationships in the group that you're working with and you need them to work on that teamwork. Board games can be a really great way to get this started or reintroduced back into your classes. They're excellent for team building. Second is that board games are they're really good for breaking down the barriers within the classroom, and what students might associate with activities that might take place within the classroom, and the barriers that they might have built between themselves and you as the tutor. So the barriers between the tutor-student relationship, especially I found with students obviously experiencing FE. Got students coming straight from school to then college, and it's a very different environment, and it takes quite a lot for students to break down the expectations that they bring with them from their former education. And one in particular I found constantly having students calling me miss even in the second year of their course, and not being comfortable on the first name basis. Board games can really help with that. It changes the ideas in their head of what they have for what your relationship with them is going to be like. I think students quite expect you as the teacher to be, you're the one who sets them their homework, you're the one who gives them disciplinaries if they're late all the while, you're the one who, you're supposed to be this strict person that tells them what to do and tells them off, and I think especially in FE that's not always going to be the case, and it's not really how you want your students to perceive you. So introducing board games and playing the board games with them as well, so you're sort of a competitor against them, can be really good for breaking down those barriers. Next, board games great for confidence boosting. If you've got a group of young people who you really need to get them to come out of their shell a little bit, and give them a boost of confidence, board games is a great start for that. They're great for improving confidence with communication, getting them talking amongst themselves, and then ultimately getting them to talk to you, which can be a really difficult thing to do, especially in the early days of first meeting a new group, to get them to open up and talk to you and come out of their shelves. And as with the prior point with breaking down the barriers, the confidence is often found when they feel like they're in a different circumstance, a different environment that's not all about education and learning. It can be about fun as well, so that confidence comes out when they feel more comfortable and more at ease and they're having fun. Board games are really, really fantastic tools for hiding the embedding of skills, of things that you want your students to learn that perhaps they're somewhat reluctant to do so. In particular, maths. Maths, super important subject area. Obviously, whatever subject you're studying, there will be an expectation for maths to be embedded as part of it. And a lot of students, from my experience, really don't enjoy maths for some reason, but for board games, actually you're doing maths just naturally whilst you're playing in most of these games, and will have maths as part of it. And that's not the only one. Lots of key skills are embedded in it, but as well as key skills, there's also a lot of games out there that you could use to embed some of your subject specific content as well. Have a look out there at what different games there are that deal with different subject areas. For example, you might be doing a fine art course. Rainer Knizia's, he did classic art and modern art, two board games that were really great. Or maybe you're doing science and something like genotype, or there's loads, so many different subject areas that board games have done these days. I'm sure you'll be able to find something that suits your classroom. And the last reason of why you should be including board games in your classroom is because they are fun. They're fun for the students, but also they're fun for you. I don't know how many of you that are teachers out there enjoy your job all the while, have fun doing your job. Hopefully a lot of you, but some of you maybe not so much anymore. Maybe you've lost the spark for it. Maybe teaching's no longer fun. A really great way to just reintroduce some fun back in your classroom is to stop playing board games and having fun. Students are going to be more open for learning and listening to what you've got to say if you're someone in your classroom is somewhere that they associate with fun, and you're going to have a great time as well. So there we go, 5 reasons of why you should be incorporating board games in your classroom, and I'm sure there are loads of other reasons as well. If you can think of any more, maybe chuck them in the comments for me so I can have a read too. When I was planning this video and thinking about what to include, there were a few considerations that I had, things to think about before introducing games into your class, and things to think about when selecting which games are appropriate for the group of students that you're going to be working with. The first one is time. How long do you have for your session, for the activity, and how long is the game going to take? Some games will take 15 minutes, some games will take an entire day or longer, so you really want to think about that before you start a game, and make sure that you have enough time to teach the game, for the students to learn it, and then to actually play the game. And bear in mind that some games will say on the box that they only take 15 minutes, and in reality they probably will take a lot longer than that, so it's worth having a bit of a trial run first if you're unsure. And the next thing to consider is the learning curve. How easy is it to learn how to play the game that you have picked, for the students but also for you, because remember, you're the one who's going to have to read the rule book, learn how to play, and then teach the students how to play the game. So thinking about that beforehand is going to be really important. You will know your learners, you'll know what level learners and whether or not they're capable of comprehending really complex rules. So think about that before you start to play. One of the things you really want to avoid is having students who actually playing games has the opposite effect on them and they lose their confidence for it because of it. One of the things that I've seen before is where a student maybe they don't quite understand the rules and they then become really reluctant to get involved in it through fear of being embarrassed in front of their peers, of messing up and looking stupid, for getting something little wrong. So you really want to avoid that happening. That's not the point of having board games in the classroom. You want something that is that a learner is able to learn in a short amount of time and that you're able to teach easily. I mean, you're teachers, so this is something perhaps you are used to be able to do, but it is a different area to what you're used to. So familiarise yourself with it. Make sure that learning curve is right for your level of learners. The next one that I considered is just a really practical one, and that's the affordability, the cost of the games. The chances are you're probably buying games out of your own pocket, so you don't want to be spending £30-40 on a game for you to then be really cautious with students playing it. Don't bend the cards, don't lose the pieces, and getting really worried about whether or not your new game is getting damaged. Or, maybe you're fortunate enough to have secured a bit of budget to put together a classroom board game shelf, but you still will want to get the best value for your money and get perhaps several smaller games rather than one big expensive game. So of the games that I'm going to suggest to you, I've thought about sort of more pocket money cost games that you could pick up. And that also that if the students really enjoy it, that they could then go and pick it up as well. Something that I've found quite a lot is that when students really enjoy games in the classroom, they'll go out and buy those games and play them during their break time. So affordability is a really important one to think about. Next is the size of a game, and I mean that in two ways. The size of a game on the table. You don't want a big table hog of a game that's got a huge big board and loads of cards and loads of pieces and takes up loads of space in your classroom. You don't want to have to be moving around tables to create a space especially to play this game. You want to be able to quickly whip out a board game and play it in your regular classroom space. But also the size of the box of the game. You're probably going to have to be carrying these games around from your office to your different classrooms, so you want something that's going to fit into your handbag, or maybe you've got one of those cart trolley things that teachers have to haul up and down the corridors that you're going to load up with games, but still you don't want lots of big massive heavy boxes to be carrying around. You want little things that you can easily pick up and take with you. So size. And the last thing to think about is the outcome. The outcome for the learners. What are the learners going to get out of this experience? And there's three things that you could think about with this. The fun. How fun is the game going to be for the learners? And sometimes fun is fine on its own. You can just be doing this activity solely for the learners to have fun. But probably in the classroom you want something a bit more than that. And the learning experience, and how much a game offers for you to be able to have your students learn something through playing it. And the last bit is the opportunity for socialising. There are lots of games out there that you might all be playing together, but actually they're quite solitaire, where you're doing your own little thing, working on your own little tableau, and not really having opportunities to chat to the other players. When you're playing in a classroom and you're using board games with students, you want games where one of the key elements of it is the talking, is the socialising, to really get your students active and engaged in what's going on. So the outcome, what the student's going to get out of it, and a balance between those three things: fun, learning, and socialising. There are loads of games out there that were really great to use in the classroom for loads of different reasons. So I do encourage you to just have a look out there of what's available, do some research and see what's there that's in your subject area that's of interest to you and that's suitable for your learners. But I've put together a little list of 5 games that I've particularly enjoyed playing with learners and that I've found to be successful when meeting all of those considerations that I just talked about. First game that I'm going to recommend is a game called Just One. Just One is a bit of a fun party game. It's a game where players are trying to guess a word based on a series of clues that they are given by the other players on the table. Each turn you draw over a card which will have 5 words on it, and without looking at the words you'll say a number. So for example, if I say number 1, my word would be pirate, but I wouldn't know. Everybody else around the table would know. And then everybody has one of these nice little plastic boards and a nice dry white pen for writing on the board. I pop my card on my board and stick it in front of me. Everybody else then has to think of just one word to write on theirs to give a clue for that player to guess what the word is. So for example, my word is pirate, I might write ship. But before the person who's guessing is allowed to see the words, everybody compares, and if anybody has wrote the same word down, those clues don't get included. So you've got to be a bit careful in trying to think of a word that's not too obvious, but also not too obscure that the person guessing won't know what they are. It's a really fun game for playing with students, but with anybody actually. I've enjoyed playing this with at game groups, and actually I've met up with the intention of having a game night where we play perhaps a bigger, heavier game for a couple of hours. We've cracked just one out and we've ended up just playing this. And had a lot of fun in doing it. Get students working together, working as a team, communicating, and having a lot of fun whilst they're doing it as well. So my first recommendation for you to have a look out for a game for in your classroom is Just One. Next up is a game called No Thanks. This is a really great game for embedding maths, because the whole way through this game you are trying to figure out how many points you have got. The aim of the game in No Thanks is to have the least amount of points, and your points are figured out by the numbers on the cards minus the amount of chips that you have accumulated. Each turn a card will be revealed into the middle of the table, and you go round, and in turn you either have to take that card in front of you, giving you that amount of points is bad, or you have to pay a chip to say no thanks, I don't want that card, and it will continue going round. And there's a little bit of strategy in thinking of when it's an opportune moment to take a card, if it's accumulated enough chips on it for it to be worth taking. For example, if there's a card that's the number 10 and it's got maybe 5 chips on it, it's actually only worth 5 points, and remember you're trying to get the least amount of points, so it might be worth you taking it at that point so that you've got more chips to be able to say no thanks on future turns where there's a higher number card in the centre. The highest I think is 35. You're trying to get sequences of numbers in your cards. So if you did get a 10 and you then later got a 12, if you could get the 11 to put in the middle and create a sequence, the lowest card would be on the top and you would only score 10 rather than the 22 points you would have got for the 10 and the 12 separately. Can get really, really competitive. It can be played really fast. It's really quick to learn. It's one that I found that students just pick up and are able to roll with it. It's a good one that you can teach to a student and then they can teach it to each other as well. And also, in terms of the other considerations, it's quite cheap. I think it's maybe £15 or less, and it's really tiny. It's a good one for just chucking in your handbag and carrying around with you on the off chance that you get a chance to play it. So no thanks. This next game that I'm going to recommend is a really good one for playing with large groups of students. It can accommodate anything from 2 upwards, and really, so long as the players can all comfortably see what's going on in the table, hypothetically you could play with as many as you wanted. I think the most I've played with this is 12, having 2 teams of 6, and it's a game called Codenames. This is just base Codenames. There's lots of different versions of Codenames pictures. There's some versions of it that have like IPs attached to it. I think there's a Simpsons one, I think there's a Disney one, might be a Marvel one. If there's not, there should be, or a Star Wars one would be really cool. But yeah, this is Codenames. One of the reasons I've really enjoyed playing this with students is because I found it to be really easy to customise it for playing with whatever topic you want. It comes with lots of cards that have words on that are the clues. You build like a 5x5 grid of all of these clues, but you could use anything as those clues. You could print off your own words or pictures, or even before I've played it with objects and just put out a grid of 5x5 different objects on the table to play with. With students, it's really good for using, a specific topic for what the clues are going to be. So I've played it before with a group of film production students and printed out pictures of different equipment and used that as the clues. So yeah, you can kind of play with whatever you like. I recommend playing it, just with the what's in the box first, but you can customize it to include anything. As I say, it's played in 2 teams. Teams can be as large as you like. Each team has a leader, so it's maybe a good one for playing over a series of weeks, where each week the students take it in turns to be the leader for that group. The leader gives clues and the teams try to guess from the various words which ones they're alluding to. It's a really fun game. Good for problem solving, good for building leadership, communication and team building, and that's Codenames. And next is a game called Spyfall. Spyfall is a hidden identity type game. It plays up to 8 players. You can play with maybe 5, but I wouldn't play any less than that. It's a game that really works best at more players. And in Spyfall, it has lots and lots of packs of cards for different rounds. So one round you'll get a set of cards and everybody's given 1 card, and that card indicates a location. So you are all in the same location and everybody knows we're in the restaurant today, except for one player who's the spy, and the spy has none of the information on the card that everybody else does. So you're playing through the game, asking a series of questions and giving answers to try to figure out who is the spy. And meanwhile, the spy is trying to figure out where you are. So it's a 1 versus all game. The spy wins if they figure out where you are before they get caught. Everybody else wins if they identify who is the spy around the table. So you've got to be really careful with your questions, that you don't give any answers that are too specific and give away the location, but you also don't want to say anything that's too obscure or makes you look suspicious as the spy, because people might try to make guesses who's the spy and end up losing because they make an incorrect guess. On the card there's a little bit of extra information if you want to role play it a bit more. Everybody's given a different role. So for example, in the restaurant you've got the waiter, the customer, the maitre d' and so on, so you can kind of role play as who you are. And there's lots of different locations, different environments that you can play throughout, and do different rounds of it and take it in turns. Take it in turns on who the spy is, or it might be the same person over and over again, as we've had happen before when I played it and the same person was the spy 3 times in a row. the main focus of this game is communication. It's socializing, you're asking questions, you're thinking of answers, and you're trying to solve that puzzle of who's the spy. Students find it really, really fun, and so do I, so I'm sure you will too. That is Spyfall. And the last game that I want to talk to you about today is the game that I have played the most with students and have had the most success with students enjoying this game, and then constantly asking me, when are we going to play this game again? And that is a game called Werewolves of Miller's Hollow. You can tell how much I've played this game by how absolutely battered the box is. It's because it's one that I've had stored in my office drawer for years, that I've kept in my handbag and carried around with me, and played it loads with students. It can accommodate as many players as you have. You can get different copies of the game for it to accommodate more. With one box you can play up to 18, but actually you could play infinite amounts. There's a version of it that plays 200 odd if you've got enough copies. And it's a bit of a storytelling game, hidden identity. So you'll have one person who is the storyteller. As the teacher, it would be you that would be telling the story throughout the game. Everybody is given a card that gives them their identity. They are either a townsfolk, innocent villager, or they are a werewolf. And this is one of the things I love about this game, actually, is that it has really simple, easily recognisable iconography on the cards for the students to know straight away what they are and what their role in the game is. So you're playing as townsfolk of a village where there have been some suspicious things going on, some people have been going missing, and there are some werewolves in the town, and you don't know who the werewolves are. Play through a series of rounds with somebody getting eaten every night, and then the townsfolk, wielding their pitchforks to get revenge, and make a guess on who the werewolf is. Werewolves win if they manage to eat all the villagers. Villagers win if they manage to track down who all the werewolves are. There are some special abilities in it, such as the little girl who has the ability to peek at night time to see if she can find out who the werewolves are. There's the hunter that can, if they die, they can take somebody with them and shoot somebody on their deathbed. It's just a really, really fun social interaction game. One of the things that it relies on is having a good storyteller. So if you're going to play this with students, you need to make sure you're familiar with the story, you're familiar with the rules, and you tell the story in a way that gets them engaged. Try to role play it a little, try to put a bit of flavour into it, try to set the mood. Maybe you could draw the curtains and make it a little bit dark, maybe have some eerie music on in the background, and students really respond well to it, really enjoy it. As I say, I've had groups of students where they've asked to play this game over and over again, so much so I have 2 copies of it so that I could play with more students, and I also bought the expansion for it as well, which I think is the one that, there's a version, Community of Hamlets, that plays up to 200 players at the same time. I've not tried that, if I'm honest with you. But it's a really great game for playing with large groups, with students, with groups that don't know each other, or with groups that have known each other for years. I've played it with a massive variety, always to great success. So Werewolves of Miller's Hollow. Incidentally, Asmodee have just announced that there is going to be a Netflix series of it coming out soon. I don't know anything about it, but it sounds interesting. Few more games to share with you, and these ones I'm not going to talk about them individually, I'm just going to show you them. You can go off and do your own research about them, but these are all games that are in the low price bracket. They're all quick, simple, easy to play, work well with students, and ones that I recommend you checking out. So we've got Roll For It, Bandido, Illusion, Flux, it's a game that actually I don't particularly like, but it does work well with students. Skull, great one for with students. It's also one I recommend if you're looking for a game that's good for sticking in your handbag to take to the pub. It makes a brilliant drinking game. Love Letter, this is the Hobbit Love Letter. There's lots of different versions of it out there. There's a Batman one. You can just, they're all good. Welcome to the Dungeon. I've got Ink and Gold for sale. Once Upon a Time. This is a really good storytelling game, great for getting students to be creative. And then there's these dicey games by Steve Jackson, Zombie Dice, Dino Hunt, there's a Cthulhu one. Again, games that I don't particularly rate, that I wouldn't play myself, but they're really good just to have, carry around in your bag to crack out to play with students. There are loads of games out there. Get and have a look at some of these, do your own research. There's a whole world of games out there for you to play with your students. Okay, that's it from me. I hope you found my video to be interesting, informative. I hope that I've convinced at least one of you to start introducing board games into your classroom. If you do, let me know, which games did you play, how did you find them, did your students enjoy them? If you already play board games in your classrooms, let me know, which games do you play? Are there any considerations that you've had that I missed out that I should be thinking of? Really interested to hear about other people's experiences with board games in classrooms, because I have enjoyed playing board games with students so much over the years, and I really hope to get back in the classroom again soon and playing games. Thank you very much for watching, folks.